Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay from Sony AlphaLab, and what I got here is the Sony A7s. It's a full-frame E-mount camera, and this one specializes in low light, super high sensitivity camera. It's 12.2 megapixels and it goes for about $24.98 US. The sensor features the micro lens design just like on the A7R. So basically on the corner of the sensor, the micro lenses are aimed in so it can capture the light better when coming in at an angle. So that's a really nice feature, and it really helps drastically when using lens adapters and wide-angle old-school lenses. This camera is much better than the A7R and the A7 in that regard. It's been reported by several reliable sources, and I really wanted to make sure that I pass that information along for you old-school lens users. So the resolution's a little lower, 12.2, but it's enough. Alright, so what else we got going on with the A7S is it has the XAVCS Kodak format that you can record to, which is much higher quality, and you will need an SDXC SD card in order to record in that format. And in addition to that format, it also has the picture profile S-Log2 gamma, which looks kind of flat when you record the video, but it allows you to do post-processing and get huge dynamic range afterwards. So that's a very powerful feature that this camera has. And the RX10 just came out with a firmware update, in case you're wondering. It just came up with a firmware update that allows that camera to do that as well. That's the RX10, just so you know. And then also on the A7S, it has the headphone out. It also has the HDMI out, which can pump out straight, uncompressed 422 4K UHD video. And that's a very powerful feature. So if you want to use an external recorder, to get that higher quality uncompressed, you can use something like the Atomos Ninja 2, for example. You can record right out of the HDMI, and then it'll just go right to that solid state drive in the higher quality format. So if you do write to the card, though, it is 50 megabits per second, which is really good, much better than the 28 megabits a second that's available on this A7R camera. You know, it's got the tilting LCD screen, it's got the high-res EVF here, high res, and it's got the multi-port shoe, so you can use studio flashes, you can trip, you can also plug in accessories like the XLR audio ports, things like that, really high quality stuff. Also microphones can go, video lights can plug on here. The battery goes in the bottom, it takes the NPW50 style or the MP50 style battery. A little bit small in my opinion for battery life, but this camera does come with two in the box, so that's cool. And the memory card goes in the grip here like so. Well, a couple other things that the Sony A7S has is timecode and user bit. You can actually pump that information right into the video file and it'll overlay. So that's a feature that this camera has that some pro video users might enjoy or need. The ISO on the Sony A7S goes up to 409,800. Now, it's a little bit noisy obviously at that high, but it's great to have that feature. I set my auto ISO to 102,000. So it went from 100 to 102,000 for auto, and that's basically allowed me to just point and shoot in almost any condition. Occasionally I had to go higher, but I mean that's when I'm using like f8 and it's really dark. So this basically allows you to get a faster shutter speed in very, very low light at a higher aperture even. So, you know, low light concert photography, things like that, this might do a good job, I would say. Also, wedding photography, if you want to use really low light and get cleaner images. You can't print as big with 12.2 megapixel, but this is much different than the A7R, and that's what I'm trying to highlight in the A7. So this is like a low light monster, especially for video. So overall, the video quality is much better on this A7S camera due to the higher bandwidth, the better Kodak, better format, and also the way it samples from the sensor. The higher dynamic range that this offers, and again the ISO ability is amazing. 409,800 max ISO, incredible. For this review I used mostly the 35mm f2.8 lens, which is a full frame E-mount lens, and it's not bad. It goes for like $798 I believe, could be wrong about that. I much prefer the 50mm though, honestly, and to be honest, the 50mm f1.4 rocker lens was my favorite lens to use. I mean, this lens is just killer. 1.4, you can't go wrong. So I used that on here with the cheesy cheap adapter. 20 bucks on Amazon, can't go wrong. Alright guys, so stay tuned. I'm going to move over into Lightroom, show you some sample photos, and then I'm going to show you some sample video, and then we will wrap this review up. One other feature I wanted to mention was this does 120 frames per second too. I forgot to say that. So let's move on into Lightroom.
Hey buddies, here we are in Lightroom 5, and we're going to go over the Sony A7S sample photos. I got tons of them here. So first thing I want to show you is the high ISO lab photos. So let me go in there. I'm just going to click on the metadata tab up here. And I have this one category here. If you click on these little arrows, you can change your column, and I change it to ISO speed, so it's easy to go between the different ISOs. And check this out. Here's 400,000. Dun dun dun. Let me zoom into 100% so you can see. And not too bad. Let me get rid of this. I mean, you know, there's some detail there for sure. It's not 100%, but I mean, that's incredible if you ask me. The fact that it's got all that detail, especially from this distance, and that's a raw file. Here's the JPEG. I'll zoom in on that so you can see. This is ISO 400,000. Remember, 409, 600. So let me go back to show you what 200,000 looks like. There's 200,000 zoomed in, and you can see that's much better. Significantly more detail, a more usable file. Here's what the JPEG looks like. And again, more detail, more usable. And once we get to 100,000, I mean, this is usable, especially when you zoom out. Look at that. That looks pretty good. 204,800. Not bad at all. Let me go back to show you 100,000 now. And I said 100,000 in my auto ISO, like I told you earlier in the review. I set the auto ISO from 100 all the way to 102,400, and you can see why. This is 102,000 raw, and you could see the detail is very impressive in my opinion. Very, very impressive. And here's a JPEG file. Show you that. You could see the quarter. Wait till it loads. There we go. I mean, you can still see there's significant noise reduction there. But overall, I mean, that's incredible detail, in my opinion. So let me go back, and I'll show you what 50,000 looks like real quick. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to select on all of them now. And let me go here and show you what 100 looks like. This is ISO 100. Obviously, it's going to be clean as a whistle. So here's that. And here's the JPEG file. And all these photos are on my website as well, laid out nice and neat, so you can easily scroll through them. I'll just go to the 100% crop. Here's ISO 400. This way I don't have to zoom in and wait. Here's ISO 800. And here's ISO 1600, and this is where you're going to notice where it's significantly cleaner than some of the other cameras. Right around here is where it starts to become apparent. Here's ISO 3200. Next is ISO 6400. There you go. And here's 12,800. This is when the other cameras really start to look like crap. Let's see, here's 25,600, and you can see the noise is starting to come in here. These are raw files, by the way. The noise is starting to come in, but still totally usable. And we're looking at 100% crop, remember. So when you zoom out, it looks way, way, way better than this. All right, that's 51,200. Looks great. It's unbelievable. All right, 102,000. I already showed you that. So that's pretty much it for the lab high ISO photos, or lab testing photos. So let me show you some real world high ISO here. Let me go back to the grid. All right, so Layla was hanging out with Chubbs. And this is ISO 64,000, and I got 100% crop there, so I don't have to wait for it to load. And you can see it's pretty good. This here is 102,000. Zoom in, you can see the details once it loads. Give it 1 second, there we go. Looks pretty good to me. High dynamic range scenes, I was doing auto HDR with auto ISO. So I was hand holding and the ISO was fluctuating. So this shot was at ISO 32,000. So dynamic range was really high. And you can see the detail retention's pretty good in the shadows and the highlights in this 100% crop. This was another HDR frame. So this was like a +2 exposure or +1 exposure, and it's 102,000. And this was in a boiler room. Unbelievable detail retention. Oh, this was the hospital. We had a boy, Jase, just the other day. And I took a shot outside. This is 40,000 handheld, and it came out pretty good. Here's 100% crop. Pretty happy with that. And here's one of Jase laying in the thing. I just took a shot in the mirror. This is a JPEG file, 102,000. Again, pretty happy with the results. And here's one other one I took handheld. This is 102,000. Just a family photo thing hanging on the wall. And you can see it's really good. I mean, at 100,000, that's just unbelievable. All right, so what do you say we look at some real world pictures next? All right, so here we are looking at some of the real world photos. And like I said, I took a ton of photos with this camera. I had a good time with it. Love using the full frame. And the detail and highlights in the shadows is quite good. This is a JPEG file. Some weird looking church. This is a RAW file. So you can see how the JPEG really, you know, crushes down the contrast a bit. Really punches it up. Here's a cool tractor. A lot of highlights and detail information there to take a look at. It's a RAW file. A couple more cool tractor shots. There's 100% crop. This lens is really sharp, especially at 5.6. All right, so here's a couple more tractor shots. There's 100% crop. You can see the detail. It's pretty good. Here's Layla. Here's a JPEG. She was under a slide, so you could see the color cast from the light coming through. Pretty cool. And here's the RAW file that I played with a little bit. Doesn't really look that good, but I tried to take some of the yellow out and stuff. Here's another JPEG. And here's the RAW file, edited, and you can notice how much more dynamic range I was able to get out of the image. That's why it's a huge advantage to shoot RAW and edit yourself versus letting the camera do the work. See what the camera did? It blew out the highlights there. Did a good job on the trees, but it blew out the highlights in the center. And when you shoot RAW, you're able to, you know, prioritize that information, and it's just not there in the JPEG when it's blown out like that. So just wanted to show you that quick. Same thing with this photo. Did a little bit of work on this to recover the highlights and bring out some of the shadow information. And she's all the way at the end of the tunnel, and you could see the detail. It looks pretty good. That's amazing detail. And I had facial recognition technology on, which I highly recommend using if you're hand holding and taking shots like this. And what it does is it prioritizes the face for exposure and things like that. And that's why the scene is so bright. It's a little bit too bright, obviously, but on the outside you could see it's way overexposed. And that's because it used the face as priority for the exposure. And Layla's face came out pretty good. Like I said, it's a little bit too bright, but that's what the camera technology does. It works great like 99% of the time. So just wanted to show you that and explain that a little bit. We were going down some cool slides and I took a bunch of photos. Just playing around. These are all JPEGs. They look awesome right off the camera in my opinion. There's Layla. And you can see it's a little bit over sharpened. Sony's notorious for slightly over sharpening, but you could play with those settings in the creative modes and you can adjust all that stuff. Here's a couple more cool shots from this abandoned place. This one I edited. This one I also edited. Here's the RAW file, and here's an edited RAW file. It was a pretty cool scene. Broken glass. And this was just a cool weed. I just want to show you the separation quick. The weed was like 3 feet tall, and the grass was down below, so you can get good separation, you know, at this distance. That's full frame right there. Gotta love it. Layla's birthday party, she had a cool duck game. And there we go. Some of Layla. Look at her ice cream parlor. She had a blast. She had a pretty braid she wanted to show me. So yeah, Aunt Chrissy made all this, and she's unbelievably talented. And we're very lucky. Layla's very lucky. That's Baby Talon. Some of Layla's friends. That's Dominic. I edited that a little bit, but check out how sharp this is. This is a RAW file. Looks really good. Very happy with that result. Here's Layla. She's like, it was my turn to sit in front of everybody. She's such a good girl. So cute. All right, let me zoom in on this so you can see the sharpness and depth of field fall off. See that? The eyes are tack sharp. This thing just knows where to focus. And look at the deck. Just completely blurred out. Pretty cool, right? There's one of Layla sitting all cute. And we had a little birthday celebration on her actual birthday at our house. The party was a couple days before her birthday. So here's another cake shot. And we had a baby boy. I took some shots in the hospital here. Jase is his name. He's handsome. He's a baby boy. There he is. Here's another one. I pass this every day on the way to work, and I always wanted to get a good shot of it, so I went and drove by and just took a couple snapshots, and they came out pretty good. The dynamic range is nice. I took this angle here so you can see the depth. I was shooting at f8 here, so you can see the sharpness. It's pretty good from front to back, even at f8 when shooting 35mm. If I was using the 50mm, the background would be a little bit softer, especially because I focused up front here. And then this one was taken at f2.8, and you can see the background is a little bit softer, which makes sense. So then if you get closer to the minimum focus distance, I focused on these flowers here in the front, you could see the background really blurs out, even with 35mm. So here's another one of Jase on Michelle's shoulder. He's such a cutie. And I got a cool little drone there. I was just taking some snapshots of that. And here's a shot while driving with a slower shutter speed. It's always fun. And this is just a snapshot from dinner the other night. I had a good time, but I like the background, how it bokeh'd out. That's what I wanted to show you there. So what else we got is, how about some HDR photos? Let's go there next. So I took some HDR photos at this creepy abandoned place and had a blast. Here's a couple more shots, a couple angles. Look at it, it's like ominous. So let me show you this one. Kind of like this one. This one's got a lot of depth to it. And here's the boiler room building. Look at this building. Let me zoom in here so you can get to see the details. Really, really good quality. I like how the HDR renders the A7S files. Does a really good job. This boiler room was really cool. So dark. The boiler room was inside this red room. So that red door there, if you look in the red door, this is what you see. It was pretty crazy. Look at that dynamic range. See the window here? So it was like really dark in here, and then the window here was super bright. So here's another shot. Kind of cool Z scene. All right, so what else we got with the, we can use lens adapters. And I have a lot of fun doing that. That's basically if I use the Metabones adapter and hook up my Canon EF-L lenses, or I use the old school Minolta lenses. In this case, I was using the 135mm f2L lens, and it's a lot of fun because the separation you get. See this? It's really cool. And that's at f4, and this is at f2. You could see how buttery it is. Check out this badass Challenger in the parking lot. I just focused on the headlights, and I wanted to get the background really blurry. And did a great job. The car looks really cool, I think. Here's my dad. This is a raw file, so you can see it's fairly flat, but it's very sharp. This lens is killer. Look at that. Razor blade. There's a couple more shots I took with the 1740mm lens, and that lens works really good too. I want to show you how the corners perform. This is at 17mm, so you can see the sharpness of the corners is really good. It's a little bit softer than in the center, of course, but still, that's very, very good. I just want to point that out. And this one was using the Minolta lens. I love the bokeh that this lens produces. This is a raw file, so it's fairly flat. This one was with the 135mm again. This is at Layla's birthday party. I was just playing around with the color a little bit. Here's another one of Jase, the hospital. Oh, I took this at the hospital. They had a cool garden. I love the way that the background renders. It's so cool. And my brother Chris holding the baby. There's another shot with that Minolta lens. Gotta love it. It was a slightly wider version. This is the garden where I took those pictures at the hospital. It's really nice. There's my mommy holding Jase. And this is Bob. He's the babysitter. He helps babysit with Sonia. Sonia's one of the babysitters. Grandma, we call her. She's pretty much grandma. And we have a butterfly. And here's one of Allie. I took this with the 70 to 200mm lens. And you can see how good that looks. This is a raw file, so it's completely unedited, don't forget. All these files are completely unedited. Alright, so I took a couple of shots in the studio, and I wanted to show you how they came out. Check this out. Unfortunately, I accidentally had the camera in JPEG mode, so they look a little bit over-sharpened, but the results are incredibly good. Check that out. Here's 100% crop. Here's another one. I really like the way this came out. Check this out. I'll zoom in so you can see the detail. Let's wait for it to load. There we go. Notice how the lips are a little soft, but then it gets real sharp around the nose and the eyes and the eyebrow. And then over here, the depth of field falls off. And I was using f8. So f8 at 105 millimeter. I was using a 24-105 lens for this shot. So I was at f8, and you can see how the depth of field falls off so quick. That's what's so cool about the full frame. It really makes the image look more 3D, and the background really blurs out, again, which gives you more depth and a more 3D look. The last thing I wanted to show you was the picture effects. And I took a bunch of, auto HDRs and some other stuff. Here's an auto HDR, and then I went through the various picture effect modes. This one's like vivid or pop photo or something like that. And you can go through and play with these modes. They're a lot of fun. I have these all on my website labeled as to what they're called and things like that. But I just wanted to go through them quick here and show you what you can get with the same scene, using different effects. Here's illustration mode. I really love using that. It's so much fun. Here's another illustration mode. That's my car just after the car wash. This is a black and white. I love the way that came out. This is a rich black and white, so it actually takes multiple frames and blends them together, so you get highlight and shadow detail. Fantastic results. This is a high contrast black and white. I like that result too. Here's another high contrast black and white. This is selective color at the supermarket. Lots of fun. Selective color yellow. And this is just like another effect, like pop photo or toy photo or something. Here's illustration mode. This guy was great. He was the deli clerk. He did a great job. Let me take his picture. I love illustration mode. It's so awesome. There's some fish in the fish area. I talked to the fish guy. He's great. He's always there. And I asked him if I could take a picture of the fish, and he held it up for me. He's like, check this out. And he pulled it out of the freezer and held it up right in front. I was like, dude, man, thank you. So here's another illustration mode. And here's Chubbs, my buddy, checking out the baby. He was looking at the baby in the pack and play thing. And here he is. This is what he looks like. When Chubbs was sniffing him. Here's my buddy Layla on the couch hanging out. I love illustration mode. Check that out. So cool. It's so artistic looking. There's another one of Jase. Here's a flower down the road. Here's one of me hanging out the car, just playing around. Here's another one. Another cool thing about illustration mode is you can use like crazy high ISOs and they still look like excellent. Here's my buddy's Corvette. And this is what it looks like, kind of just a regular photo. And then here's the illustration mode. It's not the same frame, but I just wanted to show you the difference there.
So this is ISO 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, 6400, 12800, 25600, 51200, 100,000, 102,400, 200,800, 204,800, 409,600. Very impressive. It says plus 1.7 on the meter.
Go ahead, drop it. Here, let me try something. Watch out, buddy. Nah, that's good. Oh, there she goes.
Now you wanna go?
So this is a good sign that you need to go on a diet. Ready? Alright guys, the last thing I wanted to show you was my website where the Sony Alpha A7s full written review is at, if you want to check that out. And I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. You can see here, I got the pros and the cons, and I got all the links that you need for manuals, things like that, specs, all that stuff is here in the review. And like I said, the sample photos and high ISO shots are all organized nice and neat. So be sure to check that out, links below the video. Also, I wanted to show you on the forum here, we have this What's Hot area. And I post here constantly during the day. So all new articles, rumors, deals, all that type of stuff is posted, like I said, multiple times a day here. If you just check this out, you can see all how popular it is and how much action's going on. And there's multiple pages here, so you can scroll back. So be sure to check this out. And here's the main forum area. So you can see all the different categories and stuff. I already have it up here. Photography talk, there's all sorts of stuff going on. Lots of posts, tons of user photography. We got lots of questions and answers, things like that. So be sure to check that out when you get a chance. And again, I really appreciate your support, guys. So have a great day, and I'll catch up with you on Sony AlphaLab. All right, later.